Baden-Powell, he had to go back and remind and remind and remind. There's two different things. There's the aims and there's the methods. And don't let the methods outweigh the real aim of it. And those teaching moments around a campfire, those teaching moments when that little fellow stands there in awe of what's going on. It is the most potent teaching arm of the priesthood that we have. You sit in a fast meeting and watch the adults get up and bear their testimony, and the little tiny kids get up and recite one. But to see young people really in sincerity and with great emotion bear their testimonies. I have sat around campfires on Fast Sunday when we fasted. We were out hundreds of miles from anything and had planned and fasted and held a fast meeting. And we all sat in a little cluster. Each person bore in their testimony. And when the last one bore his testimony, I went to get up to close the meeting. And one of the kids just gave me a little signal. I said, go ahead. And I'd just like to add a little, and then enlarged on his testimony. I wanted to say thanks to you men that took time out to come with us and do this and all for us. And then that sparked another one, and then another one. And in one meeting, every boy got up twice to bear his testimony. And I had a stake president that said, you will not camp on Sundays anymore. And then I had a mother, I'm gonna go talk to the stake president. I said, please don't. He's got to know what goes on in those meetings. My son came home with tears rolling down his cheeks, told me of the Spirit. The stake president's got to know this. Please don't. When he called me onto the High Council, I mentioned to them I hated to give up my calling now. And he's, oh, Bill, we know you've been doing nice things with those little kids. No concept. Nice things with little kids. Charles Dahlquist made a statement, I think this last year, maybe before that really hit me. He said, Bill Birch, sitting over there in the shade of that tree with that pocket knife, has taught more gospel than most missionaries do in their 2-year missions. Taught it more effectively to young people. I can hearken back to David O. McKay in general conference, standing at the pulpit in the tabernacle and saying the church is full of men willing to stand there on the river bank as the boys are going downstream on a raft and calling out to the boys, be careful. Boys, there's rapids ahead. Be careful, boys. We've got all kinds of men willing to do that. That's not what we need. We need a man on the raft with the boys who's going to steer the boys carefully and safely down the river and around the rapids. But that man on the raft is a man who's willing to give the time, not waiving counsel. It's the guy that's going to pay the price and get on the raft and be with the boys and share the adventure. And that's what we need. Those of us that have had a horse in our life realize the value of a good horse. This is Dad's horse. That little blaze in the forehead, only white on him. He was all almost black, the rest of him. But that horse, I don't know what was wrong with him. He would not let a man ride him unless he had a saddle on. A man had to put the saddle on, and then he could ride. But his dad would come in the evening and pull the saddle. Why, my older brothers and I would jump on the horse and ride around. We'd get 3 or 4 of us on him and just a little pleasure ride in the evening. And that horse was fine with the kids. But I had Dad's youngest brother, who was a few years older than we were. But the horse looked at him and decided he was a man. And when Arthur would try to get on that horse, he'd pitch him. Boy, he'd jump and flare, and Arthur would go flying through the air and get so mad that he couldn't ride that horse barebacked. But all the rest of us did as kids. But Preston McKay, one time talking about the different breeds of horses and their different specialties. And the Arabian horse is known far and wide as one of the fastest breeds. And those who were breeding Arabian horses had a way of training their horses for the brood stock. Now, these are the ones that are going to present them with the future generations of Arabian horses. And they very carefully select which of these are going to be the sire of these colts, the young generation. And the way they would train them is they would pen them and leave them without any food or water for days. Now, a horse can go a few days without water and not get too panicky. But then the trainer would come down with a bucket of oats and a bucket of water. And he'd walk up to the pen where the horses are and reach in and sit down the bucket of oats and the bucket of water. And the horses would come running. And then another trainer over on the other side of the corral would call the horses' names. Hammer! The horses that ran for the oats and the water were called out. The ones that obeyed the call of their name and headed for the other trainer, regardless of how hungry or thirsty they were. Those were kept as breeding stock. They had learned obedience. Obedience even in severe situations. Obedience above lust for your own well-being. Obedience rather than lust for food or water. Obedience, the true measure of a great horse. That might have some relationship to us if we're willing to obey, even when it might be uncomfortable. It might be costly if we heed the counsel and obey. every situation. The first church-sponsored LDS encampment held was up at Farragut, Idaho. Joseph Fielding Smith came and attended, and with him was Dilworth Young. Dill Young had been Scout executive in Ogden, and I was in scouting in Spokane, Washington, but I had heard about this executive down in Ogden, Utah, that could tell ghost stories that would keep a kid up all night long. And he was noted far and wide for his wild ghost stories. Well, and now he's coming here to our encampment. And so I'm down there with our troop, and I'm, of course, all ears, sitting on the edge of a log and listening as Dilworth Young approached us. He told us some of the Baden-Powell's philosophies about strong masculine leadership and training these boys to be young men. And he recited a little poem that really touched me. Have you felt the force of the wind, the slash of the rain? Go face them, fight them, be savage again. Go hungry and cold like the wolf. Go wade like the crane. The palms of your hands will thicken. The skin on your forehead will tan. You'll grow ragged and swarthy and weary. But you'll learn to walk like a man. And if we could bundle the whole thing up, I think it's pretty well explained in that. Go hungry and cold. Go wade. Exert yourself. Grow tired. But spiritually, grow to really be a man. And that's been a guide for me for years. As a Scoutmaster, I felt my obligation was to get a boy up through first class. And then from then on, it's merit badges and service projects. And that's up to the boy. And I can't do anything about that. He makes his own goal. I made him up a book that said, if it is to be, it's up to me. And it had an eagle patch silk screened on the cover. If it is to be, it's up to me. I gave him that with a bunch of blank pages in it. And then I'd tell the parents, here are the 15 required merit badges. Now you sit down with your boy and put on the others that he wants. And then get it. And I didn't make as many eagles as a lot of other Scoutmasters because I didn't lead them by the hand through the merit badges. And I made one exception. I had a boy in Germany on a bicycle. And he told how these American suits were worthless. And he'd worn out the two suits, the pants out of the two suits he had in the first 6 months of his mission. And he finally found a German suit and bought it. And that'll take him through the rest of the mission. Because they were on those bikes constantly. And I got to thinking that we possibly should get the cycling merit badge as a troop. And so we laid it out. And I forget now that the deal, but I think there's a 20 mile and then a 50 miler and then a 100 miler, or maybe a couple or three 20s and 50s and then 100. But you end up doing a 100-mile ride. When I was a kid and my folks forgot my birthday, I got on my bike, a direct drive bike, no coaster brake, and I rode to Cove Fort and back. It was 300 miles. It took me 3 days. But I knew that 100 miles on today's bikes were no big sweat, so we didn't have much concern about it. And we scheduled it into our schedule, and we did the preliminary hikes with no sweat at all. Just a nice casual bike ride for 20, 50 miles with nothing. And then came the 100-miler. In the morning we were to go do our 100-mile. Looked out and the snow was coming down, but it was coming down almost horizontally. Oh, it was a storm. And wet and miserable and colder than all get out. And we reinforced the stops we had along the way and made sure they had hot chocolate or hot soup at these various checkpoints and stops. And so they were prepared, and we get on the bikes and head out. And about the second stop, why, one of the dads shows up. And he had 2 boys in this. And he just came in there ranting and screaming at me. What in the world do you think you're doing? This is idiocy. There's no merit badge worth this. I'm taking my boys and we're going home. I said, you get in your car and go home. Your boys are riding their bikes 100 miles through this. No merit badge is worth it. Get out of here. We're not earning a merit badge. We're training a missionary. He's not going to wake up in his mission and say, well, I can't go out today. It's cold. Well, we finished the ride. And I was good enough friend with that dad that I could talk to him pretty forcefully. And he trusted me enough that we had his boys finish the route. And the part that was the tickle to me, and it seemed like it was just a few weeks down the road, but it had to be a few years, that Henry Miller was sent on and I think it was Brazil or somewhere in South America. He was on his mission. And he wrote me the greatest letter. Oh, Bill, I want to thank you so much for the program we had. It said recently they came into our mission and took all the cars away. And we're all on bikes now. And I've got grown missionaries that are tears in their eyes. I can't ride that bike that far, and I can't do this, and I can't do that. Bill, I grab him by the shirt front and back him up into a corner and say, you boob. When I was 12 years old, I rode 100 miles through a blizzard. Now you get on that bike and go. If a Scoutmaster is sincere in seeking the hand of the Lord and the will of the Lord, and then looking after the well-being of the young scouts, he will be inspired in what and how and when and where and all the necessities to protect and look after and to teach and to train and to make men of sound minds, sound bodies, and men of character and nobility out of this young generation. And these young kids coming on now are of a royal generation. These are the greatest I have ever envisioned or thought of. And not only here in America, but throughout the world. Fine, fine bunch of young people. And when you can sit and visit with them one-on-one and exchange gifts and see the Spirit touch them, when the tears well up in their eyes, and you reach out to shake hands, and they knock your hand aside and throw their arms around your neck and hug. and the tears flow. This is the Lord's work. And we're fortunate to be engaged in it. And my prayer is for each of the adults that undertake this responsibility, that they do it with full purpose of heart, that they realize the potential that's there, and they realize the help that's needed, and they seek it. And touch the heart and the boys of this young generation. One of the great needs that Baden-Powell points out in his book, and I say his book, but it's Bill Hillcourt's book of Baden-Powell, The Two Lives of a Hero. And in his experience as a military man in the British Army, and then again in his second life as the Scoutmaster, he indicates that the great need for these young men is a role model, an ideal, a hero that they can look to. And he described it as strong masculine leadership. And when a mother gathers her boy up in her arms, there's a soft, tender, tender touch and a relationship there that's tremendous. But then there's also a great learning experience when this young man develops his masculinity and his abilities as an adult man. And mother's role, while still vital and important, is superseded by this desire to be a man. And the great need in scouting now is this strong, masculine leader. And Baden-Powell often referred to it as boys' men. My wife describes me as never having grown up beyond 12 years of age and see the world through the eyes of a 12-year-old. And that may well be. And when I was in high school, the 39 Ford Coupe was the hottest item on the market. Man, that was a sporty little car. That'd be like a little Thunderbird now. And the guy wanted $100 for it. It was a used car, but had been taken pretty good care of. And he wanted $100, and I had $75 in my pocket. And I went to Dad. Dad, next Thursday I get paid, and I've got $50 coming. Dad, if you'll loan me $25 till Thursday, I can get this car. Dad says, no. You don't go dealing for cars till you got the money in your pocket. I said, Dad, I've earned it. It's in that. It's going to be paid to me Thursday, and I've got $75. No, you don't deal for something until you've got the money in your pocket. Then you go make your deal. But Dad, it'll be gone. Somebody else will get it. Then fine, they get it. And he would not give me $25, loan me $25 for 3 or 4 days. Absolutely not. No, when you've got the money in your pocket, then you go deal. I don't know whether you recorded this one or not, but I wanted spending money. This was a few years earlier. And Mother said, you go get a job then and earn some money. So I did. I told Dad I wouldn't be here to help him on the farm because I was working in town. I sat down at the supper table. Dad said, you enjoy sitting here for your meals, do you? Oh, yeah, Mom's a good cook. Yeah, she puts on a good meal. Well, from now on, if you want to eat at this table, you will be paying her $60 a month for the privilege of eating at this table. Dad, that's all I make. Well, you're learning some of the facts of life, I guess. But if I wasn't going to help him on the farm, then I was going to have to pay for my meals. And the other alternative is to milk the cows and clean the coops and work the fields. Then you don't have to buy the food extra. Shucks, I feel great. The shed I'm living in is falling apart, but I'm great. Good enough. Thank you. Yeah, bye.